Since the Kingdom of England claimed colonies in America for them, the importation of slaves began. Mostly from African colonies, slaves were forced to ship over the Great Sea for working in America. 1619, a ship arrived in Virginia, the first English colony, carrying 20 Africans. This was the time when Virginia claimed their first slaves. These slaves served on big plantations, such as cotton plantations, or in the households of American people. It didn't take a long time until holding slaves became very popular in America. So more than 500,000 Africans were shipped over between 1619 and 1808. The treatment of the slaves was very bad, and the work was hard. A descendant of the slave remembers.
There is a boy here on the plantation who looks like my friend Koyo. His name is Paul and everyone treats him badly because he has funny colored skin and because his father was white. Even I hit him sometimes. He calls me John, so does Mr. Jones, the master here. There are lots and lots of people called slaves here. Paul says I'm a slave, but I don't know what that means. One day master saw Paul teaching me to speak English and hit him so hard. There are some children here who look like me and who have never been anywhere else. They try to make me do their work, but their mothers in the house stop that. They say I have to do enough looking after the animals outside.
It was inevitable that things would change soon. And they changed. 1861 was the outbreak of the American Civil War between the free states of the North and the slave states of the South, which had split from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. At first, none of both sides were sure how long the war would last and how serious it would be. But after the first victorious battle for the South at Manassas, the North began to recruit a serious army. On January 1, 1863, in the middle of the war, President Abraham Lincoln passed the Emancipation Proclamation, in which he declared all slaves as free in the rebel states. The turning point in the war is said to be the failing of the Southern troops in Gettysburg in July 63. At the end of the year, the North controlled the whole Mississippi region, and in summer 65 the war was over, with the victory for the North and the freedom for the slaves. But this was not the end. Right after the Civil War, the Ku Klux Klan were formed by 6 generals of the defeated South. 1867, a big conference of this clan took place, and they created a constitution and elected Nathan Bedford Forrest as the leader. There were 500,000 active members and a massive amount of sympathizers, who impeded the Afro-Americans from their civil rights with the use of intimidation, arson, corporal violence, kidnapping and murder. In 1871 was the Ku Klux Act to stop the assaults of the Klan, but it didn't work out. The opposite happened, and there happened more violent offenses than ever. Until the year 1874, the Klan was active. In 1874, the Democratic Party had the majority in the South again, and the organization dissolved. Due to this constant confrontation with poverty and segregation, there was the Great Migration, where millions of Afro-Americans left the southern states and moved to the Middle West. But there, these people mostly weren't able to find work and lived apart from the whites, so rundown neighborhoods called ghettos developed. In the 1950s and 60s, under the leadership of Martin Luther King, the Africans tried with boycotts, non-violent protests and marches to accelerate the slow process of equality. The civil rights movement reached its climax on 28 August 1963, when 200,000 people of all races assembled in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. to hear King's speech.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia.
These were the most famous sentences of the speech, and they changed the treatment of the Afro-Americans significantly. After the murder of John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson declared at the 19th June 1964 the civil rights law where segregation was cancelled. King carried on engaging for the rights of the Afro-Americans, but next to many sympathizers, he had many enemies. He held a speech at the 3rd April 1968 to the Poor People's March. On the next day, he was shot. In more than 100 cities were riots after this. As a conclusion, King was a man of the masses, and his influence was unbelievable. But there are still problems for the Afro-Americans. There are still disadvantages for blacks in education and wage. An average salary of an Afro-American is only 62% of a non-Hispanic white. Furthermore, families are often incomplete, and colored men are twice as often arrested as whites. 8% of the black men are lifelong arrested. But after all, you can say that much progress has been made, and it will continue. There are recognizable advances in sports, politics, music, and movies. If everyone's working together, a good future awaits the Afro-Americans.